Hello, this will be my Module 5 practice for the squishy circuits lesson. So I wanted to ask, how can we diagnose what the problem is with broken Christmas lights? I thought about broken Christmas lights because they do have everything to do with series versus parallel, and I wanted to use the squishy circuits in order for students to figure out, okay, what happens when you connect lights in series versus what happens when you connect lights in parallel. There's a lot of different Christmas lights that are connected in series versus parallel. And so the ask here is asking, okay, well, if we learn what happens to circuits when they're connected in series versus when they're connected in parallel, we can try and figure out what the problem is with broken Christmas lights. And so the imagine here is, well, we were going to try and learn how circuits work by seeing how different configurations of circuits affect lights. And so series versus parallel, I wasn't going to explicitly define it, because I wanted students to try and figure out, well, there's going to be two different configurations that'll affect how the LEDs will light up. And so the plan was to try and explore different ways to connect three LEDs, perhaps in a fork, perhaps in a line, perhaps in a circle, and see how modifying the circuit would affect the LEDs. And so when you create it, right, you can test some different designs, you can note some different observations. And there's a picture of me having built one of those circuits, and, I hit it on purpose, perhaps making a little design out of it or anything like that, making a little bit of art with it. But, it was pretty hard for me to create the circuit in the first place. But with a little bit of trial and error, I was able to get through it. And so what I would improve is just making sure I modify the circuits, making sure I make observations, and making sure I test solutions. And then with my broken Christmas lights, then I can try to figure out, okay, are these Christmas lights in series or are these Christmas lights in parallel, and see what how to fix each of them. And so through this lesson, the topic here is determining how circuits change under different wiring configurations, and analyzing the effect of short circuiting on circuits in parallel versus series in order to fix some broken Christmas lights, right? The big idea here is that the flow of electricity can help us explain how electronics break and what we can do to fix those issues, right? Knowing what's wrong with something often involves getting a little bit of background knowledge into what could possibly be wrong, and that involves oftentimes understanding what the underlying concepts behind that. And so systematically building up to more complex concept machines and things like that by studying the simple stuff, right? And so how will the students come to understand? Well, they can, for example, be tasked with coming up with a wiring scheme for a house. Maybe try and figure out, okay, how do you turn off the electricity to the entire house, and maybe how do you turn off the electricity to each individual room, right? Try to come up with a circuit breaker of some sort. The reasoning here is by experimenting with different setups for parallel and series circuits, students will be able to figure out the way that different lights interact with each other. With the modeling, the model will incorporate physical circuitry components. We have the metal tape, we have the batteries, we have the paper, etc., etc. And then with communicating, students can work in pairs to discuss ideas and goals for the house and come up with a design that works for the problem. Learners will have a lot of agency. They'll be able to come up with their own vision for how the circuitry should work, right? They'll have free reign over how they decide to wire things. And with that free reign, they can then, communicate with other students and see how their circuits are similar and different in a lot of ways, and perhaps learn something about that. With the content confidence, as this is an introductory lesson, students can feel comfortable just exploring the concepts behind series versus parallel. I'm not asking them to, recall difficult formulas or anything like that, but just get a feel for what they observe and how these things can change. with the emotional content, right? The Christmas lights and the houses, very relevant to the students. And so, perhaps you wanted to decorate your classroom. And so, trying to figure out what's wrong with broken Christmas lights can attach some significance to the work that they're doing. And finally, with personal relevance, wiring Christmas lights is often a hassle. I'm sure, students, parents always have some issues wiring Christmas lights or anything like that. And, this could be easily transferred to other machines that break in their lives as well. Things like maybe cars or what have you. And so does the lesson present a real problem? Yes, right. So trying to fix your Christmas lights. Will the students relate to the problem? Yes. Does the lesson allow for multiple acceptable and creative approaches for successfully solving the problem? Yes, right. Through experimenting with different setups with the circuits, they'll be able to creatively differentiate their approaches to solving it. Does the lesson integrate and apply important science and math grade level content? Yes, maybe somewhat within math, certainly, because I'm not introducing the formulas, but definitely it does apply very important science concepts, right? Making sure that they, break down tasks into simpler ones and go from there and see the process of inquiry reveal knowledge to them. Does the lesson clearly use the engineering design process as the approach to solving problems? Yes, right. Does the lesson use a student-centered hands-on teaching and learning approach? Yes, definitely with the making the circuits. Does the lesson lead to the design and development of a model or prototype? Yes, they are creating something. Is the role of technology in the lesson clear to the students? Yes, right. With technology, these Christmas lights or any decoration really, and this could be generalized to any different technology. The role of technology should be clear. Does the lesson successfully engage students in purposeful teamwork? Somewhat, right? Having them talk in pairs will, help them bounce around ideas. In terms of teamwork, with that does get into the problem of student agency, and that might be a balance to consider. Does the lesson include testing the solution and evaluating the results? Definitely yes. And does the lesson involve students and communicating their design and results? Somewhat, but I would say yes. All right. That'll be it. Thank you.